Everybody. Welcome to the Friday Homestead update. I've been told what I need to do is talk to y'all as you get in here and give it a little time because apparently when I monetize a live stream, it puts an ad at the beginning that you got to get all the way through before you can actually see me talking. So then you miss the first 30 seconds or so. I have tried to turn off as much as possible on that. Like I have activated monetization on live feeds because if somebody wants to super chat me, that has to be turned on for that to happen. And I really appreciate super chats when they happen and wanted to set the framework for that. Apparently, when you just turn monetization on YouTube, though, it does skippable videos and all sorts of stuff. So I've turned everything off that I can. Hopefully, this makes it so that you can now hear what I'm saying. And we're going to start the show. Now, today, we're going to do an experiment. It's a Homestead update day, and StreamYard just added the ability for me to put a music in. So here's what we're going to try to do. I'm going to play the intro to my podcast and then jump into recording today's podcast, which is produced as an audio podcast at livingfreeintennessee.com or on any podcatcher on your phone. So if you're watching this on YouTube, but you're like, I like listening to audio podcasts, you can totally do that. Just go to your podcast player, search Living Free in Tennessee. You'll find me. It's a cowboy hat, a corn microphone, and it says LFTN on it. You can subscribe to that. That's great. Some episodes of the audio podcast end up being only audio. They're never video. And that's because when I interview some people, it's better to do it without the live video. I did one the other day from my trip to North Carolina. And although he would have been fine live, it was not great to try to do that. I was literally recording from the car. That one should come out, I think Sunday is when you'll see that one. So that is, not a time when we want to also try to stream video. Okay, so for this show today, I'm going to do what I've done in the past, which is record live the Homestead update. Then I'm going to stay on afterwards and take questions. I've invited Holler neighbors who want to join at the Q&A time to join. I don't know if they will because they're running around doing, stuff. And you'll hear in today's topic what it's like on a homestead this week in the summer. With that, though, we are going. Oh, if you want to have a question notice, put it in all caps in the comments, and then I'll star it, and then I'll save it till after, which means if you're just asking a question based on what I'm saying, maybe put a little context in there. If you're on your phone and it's a pain in the neck to do uppercase, just the first couple words being uppercase means I know you want me to see that versus you're just talking to each other. Okay, so we're going to do the experiment. Can we play music and then I jump into the podcast and then we go from there? This could be really fun. Okay, so here we go.
The place to be is living free in Tennessee.
Welcome to Living Free in Tennessee, where we talk about building the life you choose on your terms. Today is Friday, July 8th, 2022. And this is episode 592 of Living Free in Tennessee. And we are experimenting with StreamYard's play music before. And it turns out if you don't hit pause right after you play the jingle, it plays again. So you got the intro music twice today. I'm actually okay with that. I am totally okay with that. Today is a Homestead Happenings episode for July 8th, 2022. We will be talking about the happenings on the homestead from the last week, and we are recording this live on YouTube. So if people have questions they want to handle at the end, just put them in all caps and I will handle this. Today we're going to be talking about the dog days of summer being here about a month early and sort of the busyness that we experience during this time, preserving food and much more. I also want to remind you that we have a swale workshop we're putting together in Camden, Tennessee at Special Operations Equipment. It is July 30th and 31st. Billy Bond of Permapastures Farm and William Bond are teaching that class. It's going to be really awesome. It's got a lot of hands-on experience, but we're not expecting you just to dig all day in the sun. So it's not that kind of hands-on, although we do have a section of the class where we're actually showing you how to dig a swale if you do not have heavy equipment. And then we have heavy equipment there to get it done because it's way easier with heavy equipment. But sometimes you may have a really, I don't know, sensitive piece of land where you don't want to put a track hoe on it or an excavator or anything. And that may mean digging them by hand. So we'll show you how to do that, but we're going to also show you how to plan them, how to shape them, how to plan the vegetative matter for that, how and what would plant where on that. There is a combination of hands-on and theoretical. That's over at selfreliancefestival.com. Click on workshops, and that takes you straight to the swale workshop. Grab your tickets while you can. Also, if you want me to cover something specific in this episode that I'm not, hey, have questions, you want to add a stump to stop sauce thing, you can do that via email. Just email me, Nicole at livingfreeintennessee.com. That's Nicole at livingfreeintennessee.com. And Janet let me know my intro played twice. Yeah, that's because I totally need to hit pause, I guess. Once it'll just loop. There's a little button at the top that you check that says loop or not loop. If I had unchecked that, I think it would have been okay too. But yeah, it's live and learn, live and learn, live and learn. With that, it's time for our first segment of today's show. And that is Forage. This is where I talk about what we are finding on the homestead, mostly wild focused, not all wild focused. And this was the week of the berry, right? So we've had strawberry season has come and gone. And I noticed the wine berries last week were starting to come on. So we had wine berries, blueberries, raspberries, blackberries, and gooseberries this week. In fact, I'm super excited. I'll talk about on the community section later something. I've had a blueberry development. So that's all going on. And those are just, I don't have a ton of any of those things planted here. So I'll just do a handful here and there. And I see Jenny Hill is in the comments. Jen, I sent a join link for later if you want to on the Holler Neighbor secret. You know the way we communicate. Anyway, elderberries are not yet ripe, but they are looking like they're thinking about it. So they've got, the berries on the plant. And the thing about elderberries is you do not eat the berries when they're not ripe. So when they're not ripe, they can poison you. So you want to wait till they're ripe. Green one's bad, purple one's good, right? And then you can make your elderberry syrup out of them. So I'm just keeping an eye on those. And we have little patches of elderberries all over the holler, some of which I've cultivated, some of which just grow, some of which are closer to the creek and they're in a ravine and they ripen a little later. The ones up on the hill ripen sooner. So it's sort of like this wave of ripeness we'll go through. And then it's time to harvest plantain and comfrey leaves and make your salves or dry them for winter storage. Somebody asked if freeze drying the plants will disturb the viability of their medicinal use. I don't know. I know that I use freeze-dried elderberries and the elderberry syrup works. And I know that my mom has made comfrey salve from freeze-dried comfrey, and it appears to work on inflammation for bug bites. But it would be really interesting as somebody who is an herbalist listening to this, who totally has an opinion on this, lets me know. I do know that when I do teas, I like to air dry them without adding heat. So it'd be a really good question for somebody listening to this who knows more than I do to answer. That's right. Sometimes we can admit we don't know everything, guys. I've only been homesteading for 15 years. I'm also harvesting mint for tea, and the echinacea is blooming other places. It's starting to bloom on my hillside, so it's time for me to collect that for the winter too. So that's what's going on in the forage world. If you listened to last week's podcast, you know that we've been experiencing drought conditions, and this has actually made it so things I usually harvest either didn't this year. They just didn't make it to where they need to make it, or they haven't given me flowers yet. I think they just wanted water. And yesterday we had a torrential downpour. It was beautiful, and we might get another one today. So we had rain in the morning. That was enough to get like the grass wet and the ground wet, and then it dried off immediately. Then sun came out, and then in the afternoon, we actually had several hours of waves of thunder showers, and that broke the hydrophobic cycle in the soil. What's the hydrophobic cycle? Well, the soil, when it gets super dry, it becomes afraid of water, hydrophobic, right? Phobia. And so the water will just sort of roll off it and not soak into it, especially when we have fairly high levels of clay in the soil here. And that means that when rain comes through, it kind of starts absorbing, but doesn't totally. And then if you don't get more water, it'll just dry right out again. And the water either runs off it or just goes straight through it. Well, when you get waves of moisture, what happens is the soil starts holding on to the water again like it's supposed to. And it takes water over time to break that cycle. And so out where the grass grows, it had become hydrophobic. And even in my garden, there was, if you went down far enough, it started getting, it was like, I have my garden heavily mulched, so it kind of holds the moisture in, right? And down to a certain level, though, it was pretty dry. So having the the waves of rain come in has really helped, and we might get it again today. So that's awesome. I had told you last week we were supposed to get like tomato blight week weather, and then it was like it's going to rain today. No rain. It rained everywhere but here. It's going to rain today. No rain. It rained everywhere but here. It's going to rain today. Just a tiny little like the drops evaporating before they hit the ground happened, and then finally today we got some rain, or yesterday we got some rain, and it was glorious. And hopefully this will help with some of the garden things. My garden's doing okay this year, but it's not doing as well as usual. And we are watering it with sprinklers on a schedule. And that's keeping things alive, but they're not as robust as usual. Just it's not like explosive growth of green beans or whatever. So that was just wonderful. And hopefully we get more rain today. Here's what's up with the livestock stock. This is the next segment. Nighthawk had 7 baby rabbits, and it was kind of funny because the first day he came down, he's like, I see at least 2. And the next day he's like, there are 4. And then I fed his rabbits, and I'm like, yep, I'm not going to mess around in that nest either because I don't want to cause the mom to reject them or anything, and just sort of leaving them alone. And turns out there are 7 baby rabbits. So this is cool. We've had some rabbit husbandry challenges in the last 12 months, but we have a batch. And then from that batch, hopefully we get more. I also have 2 new does in our rabbitry here. We'll see how that goes. The sheep are really good at clearing the homestead of brush and grass and all sorts of stuff. So they've been through my homestead. It's totally cleared. We may run them through again in a bit, but I'm letting the grass grow back, and it hasn't been growing very fast because of the aforementioned issue with the rain. But we are going to be clearing at base camp next. So they've been kind of going through the forest, and then we'll cross the street with them, which ought to be an interesting and entertaining day. And then put up some fence there. And there's some areas at base camp where it's really slopey and hard to maintain, and you have to manually do it with a weed whacker, and nobody wants to do that. So we're going to put the sheep on that and see how it goes, and then try to encourage ground cover on those things as long as the that we'd rather have grow is probably the best way to say it. So like clovers and strawberries and that kind of thing, I'd rather have that than the random pioneering plants that come through when you just leave things alone here. So they're really helpful as a yard maintenance tool. I'm having better luck with them than I have had with my goats. I have had goats for a long time, and they have cleared a lot here. But the fact that the sheep mostly stay in the electric fencing without a lot of fuss is helpful, because then they can just sort of free browse, and that's awesome. And then they poop here and there, and that helps with fertility, and it's great. And the sheep have been no trouble. I mean, last week I did mention that Henry was an asshole because he keeps jumping over the fence, but this week he didn't jump over the fence. So he's back to being a good boy. And I say that with fondness. It's funny because it's like, dude, really? There's like all this food. Why do you got to jump over there? And then once he jumps out, everybody's like, hey, I want over there too, because Henry's over there. It's the way they work. They're a herd animal. When one gets out, all of them get out. Anyway, we have ducklings due this week, and I have not candled the eggs. I was going to candle them this morning. Hopefully tomorrow morning I can candle them when I get back from the farmer's market. My niece is in town, so she might be super interested in what it looks like to candle eggs. Last time I candled them, I saw that there were 7 or 8 viable ones. One egg has been kicked out of the nest. So I think Tactical is going to reach in and take that one out. The mom knows it's like, nope, this is not good, and it goes. So that's happening. Ducks are entertaining. Tactical told me a story this week where he was putting the ducks to bed because we close them up at night so the predators don't get them, because the predators are mostly after them at night, although some can get them during the day, and we free range them, so we lose one from time to time. Most recently to snapping turtles. That was sad. But Tactical was putting the muscovies away, and one went running as fast as she could for the little ramp, got to the ramp, and started slipping. And so he said she just like face planted and her feet were still going while her face was still on the ground like a cartoon. And then all of a sudden she got traction and zoomed into the coop. So we get entertained by our livestock a lot around here. That is what it is. And then I'm starting to assess the freeloader problem. We have some freeloader animals that are livestock that are not paying back what we're paying into them for feed. The goats are one problem. I really like my goat, Clover. We're good friends, but the fact that I can't rotate her like the sheep is an issue. So my choice is to train her better on electric fence, or it's time for her to move on or find another use for her. Like I could breed her and have a milk goat, but then I need to milk the goat, right? And then we have baby goats, and that's a whole another like scale of like, it's a whole nother project to do that. So we're thinking about that. The pigs are semi freeloaders where they're getting fed, but they're doing a job. It's going to take them a long time to do a job. And I'm sort of, you guys have heard me go back and forth on the pigs. That our property, my property, is not exactly well designed to rotate pigs through. It's much better for sheep. And so I keep talking to Tactical about like, do we really want to keep Lady Pig or not? We like Like the problem is you start developing relationships with these animals, but at the same time, I have to be semi brutal about it because it costs money to maintain animals. And I mean, like maintaining the feed schedule of a pet pig is not viable here. It's not viable on my budget. It's not. It's like, I have a question. So I write once a week a column for, what is this thing called? Anyway, it's for a prepper thing, and it's called Summer. I'm on the summer council for it. I'm pulling it up right now. Anyway, so they send me a question on Friday that's due next Tuesday, and it is, something about prepping. And I'm coming from the Homestead perspective, and he's just gathered a whole bunch of people, and I write, a couple sentences or more detail, right? It's called the Summer Survival Council, and unprepared.life is the website if you're interested in checking that out. Unprepared.life. I can't talk to you right now. I'm live. Please close my door. Huh? Okay. Talk to Tactical. Okay. Guys, we have car trouble in the middle of my podcast, and they can't get Tactical. So now I'm going to call Tactical live on the air. They probably have it in 4-wheel drive would be my guess. That's usually what the problem is. So anyway, what was I talking about? So unprepared.life. I'm so excited I get to edit this in the middle. I hate editing audio. That's really fun. Yeah. Jack Spirko is telling me car problems. We have car problems. Anyway, I'm getting waved at through my window. This is awesome. But I write about that. So this week he's talking about the financial side, right? Where how do you balance being a prepper with the need to spend money on preps with don't want to be in debt, right? And my answer is going to be get out of debt. It's not worth going into debt to stack up a bunch of stuff. You need to be more strategic than that, but that does not preclude you from being able to handle the other part, right? Where you can start doing things to grow food at your own house so that you can store the food, so that you can start copy canning like Jack Spirko, who I just featured on my screen, copy canning so you can stack up more storage and those sorts of things. That can be done in a balance, but the feeling of pressure and panic of coming shortages that people are having doesn't mean you should mortgage your whole house and possibly lose it to be prepared for that. I think something that's free to do to get ready for things are skills, learning stuff. You can learn so much. You can learn how to grow your own food. You can learn how to can food. You can learn how to cook with alternative ingredients, all of these other things. And if you do that, you end up with a much nicer life by not also giving yourself financial ruin because you were afraid of something. And the financial piece of preparedness, I think, is something that's the easiest for people to ignore. And if you do that, you are taking away a key foundation of stability and one of the most important ones. That's one of the most important ones that you're taking away. Anyway, I don't know what that had to do with livestock other than I have freeloaders and I'm going to have to deal with that. I have to either decide I have a pet pig or I have to make her make money or she's moving on. And she's a great mama pig. So if she does move on, somebody should buy her because she's awesome. Anyway, next segment is grow. This is where we talk about how the gardens are doing. Last week I said drought, 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 drought. We got rain. And I was up in the garden yesterday weeding the garden. And I ended up super happy because I found some cucumbers that I didn't realize were there. But also, it was much easier to get the weeds out now that we've had rain, and it's looking good after this last little thing. We have cucumber week ahead of us, which probably means that I'll be preserving pickles. I'll be making pickles this weekend if there are enough of the smaller pickles that go in the jar. If I go to the farmer's market and I can get my hands on pickling cucumbers, I'll usually add a bushel of those to my year in addition to whatever we're growing up in the garden. I'll end up with a few cases of pickles, and then we serve those at events. I eat those. My family eats those. They're great on hamburgers. Like, I love homemade pickles. A lot of people don't, though. And the reason they don't is they're not as crispy as the store pickles. If you want crispy pickles, there are some tricks in canning that you can do to make them more crisp. You can use pickle crisp, which is a product you buy at the store, or you can put in a grape leaf with it, right? And that will help. But the best way to get crispy pickles is don't can them. But then you need to store them in your fridge. And the way you do that is you boil your brine, you pack your jars, you pour the brine over the jars, you put the lid on, you put it in your fridge, and you make refrigerator pickles. Those are going to be more crisp because they did not go through a water bath canner for, 5 or 10 minutes while you process them. So, yeah, Jack says the grape leaf equals tannin you add tannin and it helps keep them crispy, but they'll never be as crispy, even with that trick, as the ones you do the way I just said, where you put them in the fridge, but then you have to store them in the fridge. So I've gotten used to a slightly different texture. I do use grape leaves in my pickles. I do not use pickle crisp because I have grape leaves growing all over the yard. That's one of the vines that takes over every single year are wild grapes, and then the grapes that were planted here that are now coming up from the rootstock because the grafts have failed. Yeah. You know why those grafts failed, by the way? Here's what happened. I think this is what happened. There was this one year where the TVA flew a plane up in the woods along the lines that are above my house. And they sprayed a glyphosate or something like that. And that was the year my grapes died. And I was really pissed off because I was just starting to get grapes. I had just learned how to trim them and train them and all of that. And they just all died. And then I got put on the no spray list, which sometimes works. I'd literally have to say, no, you cannot come up this road and spray because I'm on the no spray list because I have bees. And they died. And the next year they came back and I was like, oh, good. It was just a 1-year thing. And what I think happened is the graft on the grapes, like whatever was above the graft, never came back. And the stuff it started coming out of the ground. And so I have wonderful grafting stock that I should totally get off my tail end and graft some actual grapes that I want on those. And one day I might do that. It just has not been on my priority list yet. I really do like grapes, but the grape leaves from the grafts work great on cucumbers. We have so I put pigs on my property on the same place for a long time last year. And it's because when we started rotating pigs through the holler, I realized I was very quickly going to end up with a mud bog over the whole property, and I didn't want that. And then I thought, well, I have these pigs, and I will leave them in this one place and just nuke it with them until I'm ready to move them on into the forest, which is where they are now. And then I have what's called the pig pasture rehab project. So once they left, it was pretty much all dirt, and a couple pioneer species were coming up. And what we've done is we have run sprinklers down there on a schedule. We overseeded it with Timothy grass and some other things, daikon radish and a whole bunch of stuff. And the thing about the pig pasture, though, guys, is it's really fertile after all that. And we ended up having some really interesting volunteers come up. I have a single corn stalk. I haven't planted corn in that pasture in 10 years. And it might be that seed, or it might be one of the fermented corn seeds wasn't really fermented when we fed it to the pigs because we gave them fermented corn. So we have this single stalk coming up. We have a franken squash that is the entire length of the fence down there now. And it's pretty cool looking. And then we've got a whole bunch of tomato plants coming up that do not have blight, that haven't needed, they've just needed whatever water we had for that. They're doing great. They look robust. I'm going to go down there later today with a tomato cage and put a cage over the one. They're behind my other tomatoes by about 3 feet of growth because they came from seed in the ground. So they're just behind. So my theory is when my tomatoes in the upper garden are done and my tomatoes on the front of the house are looking like we're done, which usually happens when the late flight comes through, I may get a little more time out of those plants down there in the pig pasture. We'll see. I will say this year, I have one plant in my upper garden that had blight that I just ripped the whole plant out when I saw signs of it about 3 weeks ago. I have another one that's starting that I'm deciding, do I leave this here or not? I haven't had blight this year. I've had something happen with the leaves on the front of my house with the tomatoes where they got yellowed. And I finally figured out that both Tactical and I were adding nutrient and they got over nutriented, and I cleaned out the whole system and did a reset and then sort of aligned on who's taking care of the nutrient level because I was traveling so much, but then I'd come back from traveling and be like, I know that we need nutrient in that. So yeah. And then I've tried the trick with the aspirin. Jack says, F some blight. I am censoring myself because this will be an audio podcast later. The aspirins have either worked pretty well because I planted all my tomatoes with aspirin. I've been adding aspirin to the hydroponic system I have here, or it's just not a big blight year here, but which could be because it's been really dry here compared to how it usually is just from our rain standpoint. And the other thing is my tomatoes in front of my house, that's the wall of tomatoes that helps keep the south sun from heating my house as much. Those are not getting any rain on them at all this year because I built Taj Mahaler. So there's a couple of changes. I don't know if the aspirin works or not. I just know when I heard that trick, totally wanted to try it, and I don't have as much blight this year. I have very little blight. Usually by this time, I'm starting to get tomatoes. The blight starts creeping up from the bottom of the vine, and by about mid-August, there's just no point. I just rip all the plants out. And in the front hydroponic system, I usually have a new set of tomatoes to go in to train, and they never do as well as they were going to. And that is what it is, right? So that's what's going on with that. The green beans, which I expected to be harvesting this week, are an inch long, and they just got an inch long and sat there. And I think that's because of the lack of rain. And I will see over this weekend if they start becoming actual beans. I'm also pulling a Hail Mary and reseeding just bush beans in some blank spots in my garden that I just cleared out because the arugula was done and some of the other plants are just more like the kale is like, screw you, lady. It's way too hot for kale. I pulled all that out yesterday in my garden 30, and then I'm going to put green beans in there. I'm going to hang like some shade over it, and hopefully it will germinate. And if it doesn't, it doesn't matter. It's kind of like a weird time of year to germinate seeds because it's so hot. If it doesn't, it doesn't matter because seeds are, at this point, they're free. something else I'll talk about in the community segment, right? The Garden 30 thing is going well, except for my family's in town. So my sister, brother-in-law, and niece are in town. That's why I just got interrupted on the car isn't working thing, which I assume has been taken care of. I have text messages, so I'll look at those while I talk to you. And the Garden 30 time, which I usually do 5 days a week, it's 30 minutes, sometime after 4:30 when the sun's no longer hitting the garden plot. I go up there and I just set a timer, listen to a podcast. Jack, I was listening to you yesterday on your like how to use lightning episode, which is a great episode. Guys, if you have not checked this out, Jack has a cryptocurrency specific podcast that he's doing, 1 episode a week, except for last week it was 2. And it really breaks down the benefits of cryptocurrency, how to use it, ways to integrate it into your life, and sort of why it's a good foundational thing to learn just moving forward, right? So the lightning episode was the one I was listening to just because every time I listen to Jack talk about it, it's called Bitcoin Breakout. Thanks for that. I could not remember the name of it. Bitcoin Breakout, thesurvivalpodcast.com. I'm pretty sure you have a standalone website too, right? If you put that in the comments, I'll flash it up. But I always, even though I'm learning about this stuff on my own, I'll hear him say some other idea for it when I listen to him. And I'm like, oh, yeah, that's a great idea. Like literally, Coin Payments just sent out an email. That's who I use to process my cryptocurrency transactions on my website. They said that they are no longer servicing US customers. And I have till the 17th of this month to get everything off of there that I have on there and find a new payment system to integrate, right? And when I do that, I'm going to have to change everything. It has worked for me for like 5 years. It was great because I could accept, if I wanted to accept Bitcoin Cash, but I wanted it immediately to be Bitcoin, and I could do that. It would come in, transfer to whatever, and it accepted a lot of them. But apparently the regulatory environment in our country is not one that the coin payments people are happy with. So they're going to just ditch all coin payments people. Well, I'm going to figure out how to integrate lightning payments into my Hollow Roast website. That's one thing that's going to happen. And then I've had a couple other payment processors that I've played with, and we'll see. I'm not super happy with any of them, but at the end of the day, I just can't keep going. I mean, like I have to do something because Coin Payments is leaving, and I am committed to supporting cryptocurrency payments for my coffee website, even if it becomes a pain in the butt and I have to do it manual. I will make that happen if that has to happen. Anyway, if you want to listen to the Bitcoin Breakout series that Jack is putting together, that's at thebitcoinbreakout.com. And then he's also, they're part of the Survival Podcast feed at thesurvivalpodcast.com. Now, you guys came here for a homesteading update. You had no idea I was going to talk about cryptocurrency. I'm going to talk about a really cool podcasting app later. But we'll get to that in a minute. I'm preparing a fall. So the garlic has come out, and it took me days to get the garlic out of the ground for 2 reasons. One, the ground was really dry, and it was like chipping garlic out of cement is what it felt like. And I would put a sprinkler on it, and it still wasn't like, it's just so like the soil was super unhappy. And then it was also really flipping hot. It was over 100 degrees. And, the time of day that I have to dig garlic is either super early in the morning, which is great, or at 4 p.m. when it's not as hot as it was at 2, but it's super hot. So I was doing that in 15-minute segments. Finally got all the garlic out. It is now curing. I'll cure it for 2 weeks, and that makes the outer husk of the garlic get hard. Right now, it peels like a banana peel. You peel your garlic, right? Those dry out in the curing process, and then that makes it so I can store it. So those are out, and that means that whole area where the garlic was planted doesn't have anything in it. And I could put something in it right now, or here's what I'm really going to do. I've got 3 big cement trays full of rabbit poop. So we're going to go up there. We're going to make sure there's no little weedy things coming up, like get those out of there. And I'll probably just chop and drop them, which is probably going to bite me in the butt later. Then we're going to put a whole layer of rabbit poop. We're going to put a layer of mulch. And then I'm going to water that in real good. and then I'm just going to tarp it until the fall. And when I start transplanting fall plants in September, that's the place I want to be. And I may like put water under that just to, I mean, if we keep having this drought thing, it won't be just, because what happens is the moisture wicks sideways in the soil, right? When it's raining, when all of the soil is wet. If we don't have that, that'll end up super dry and I will have to water it. But I just want to get it nice and prepared for some fall plants. And what that means is right now we are 7 weeks out from me wanting to transplant fall plants into my fall garden. 7 weeks. You know what that means? It is time to take seeds and put them in pots and germinate them and care for them very carefully, not outside in the sun, but somewhere where they can actually grow so that I can transplant them into the fall garden. And then I will direct sow some things in there as we move forward. And I usually say I'm going to do a fall garden and then I get to right now, and it's homestead busy time, isn't it, guys? Like, you gotta pull the weeds, you gotta care for the plants, you're fighting the heat to keep your plants alive, and everything that's gonna get ripe gets ripe all at once right now. And if you are a preserver, a food preserver, you're canning your butt off, you're drying your butt off, you're freezing your butt off. Not really freezing, but you're freezing things while it's hot out to get that stored for winter. And so, like, between now and about mid-September, I feel like just crazy sprint time on the side of the garden and preservation and all of those things. It's one of the busiest times for me. And then we go into fall and, it's Christmas season. So then I start roasting my butt off for coffee. So, like, between now and the end of the year, it's just like run as fast as you can. So, but this year I'm doing it. I'm going to start seeds. It will take me literally half an hour on Sunday. So I'll do a selfish Sunday where I get to do what I want. And what I want to do is set the foundation for a fall garden. So I have vegetables in the fall that are fresh. So I'm not just tapping into the canned stuff, which isn't as tasty as fresh. So we're going to do that. And I'm going to take a half hour this Sunday, half an hour. I'm going to take half an hour this Sunday and start some brassicas and some other things that I want to transplant then in September into that garden. So with that, I had one last little bullet point here, and that's the preservation update. Here's the deal. This time of year, I preserve all the things. But with the drought, my garden hasn't been as productive. So I am looking to preserve 3 bushels of green beans. I have grown exactly 0 bushels of green beans. I have a beautiful bunch of green bean plants with 1-inch beans on them. Probably what's going to happen now that we've had rain, and we're probably having rain again today, is that in the next few days, I'm going to have a bunch of green beans and start canning my butt off. Cucumbers are coming on for pickling. I'm going to be canning my butt off. Tomatoes are starting to get ripe on the front of the house. They're a week late. A week late. Last year, they were ripening a week ago because I keep a journal and I know when that happens. And they just now, like tomorrow, I'm going to get my first real tomato off of the outside plants. So what's going to happen with those is in about 2 weeks, I'm going to have a pile of tomatoes and it'll be time to can those. So you see a theme here, right? It's time to dry my echinacea for tea. It is time to dry mint for tea. It is time to do whatever I'm going to do with the summer squash surplus. Usually we're pretty good at eating those. I'm going to want to roast and dry some of the peppers that are starting to come on. You see what's going on here, guys? Basically, every spare moment is preserved food. With the addition of the freeze dryer, though, it has really freed me up for some things that I find to be a pain in the neck and to take up too much freezer space. So I freeze dried all my surplus broccoli this year. The last load is literally in right now of the broccoli. And when the green beans come on, I'm going to can them, but I'm going to blanch it and freeze dry it too, just to see how that is. Because what I've found is I do like when I'm on the road to have like packets of food I can just pour hot water in and eat. But if I freeze dry full stews and just do that, it's easy. What's better is to add disparate ingredients that I've freeze dried into things. Live and learn, right? Live and learn. Okay, next segment is Holler Neighbors and Community. This is where we just talk about the power of the community. And I had a really exciting thing happen this week. I have like 5 blueberry plants. I get some blueberries. I reached out to a friend of mine named Kat, who has a blueberry farm, just to see how she was doing because I hadn't heard from her in a while. Her husband died a few years ago, so she's like out alone on her farm, except for her kids live next door. And she's like, "Oh, great to hear from you. I've been meaning to reach out. Do you want blueberries?" So she has stopped selling blueberries because it's too much work. And her kids haven't wanted to take it over. So she's got 2 fields full of blueberry bushes that are not being used at all. And she said, "Come on out and pick them." So Sunday, also selfish Sunday activity, getting up super early because it's hot, and we're gonna go pick as many blueberries as we want, and then I'm gonna freeze dry those because those are delicious freeze dried. And then I will freeze some too for putting into oatmeal when my niece is here because she eats oatmeal, those sorts of things. I understand that while my young niece is here, there might be a blueberry cobbler in the offing. I promise you it will not be keto friendly. It's just gonna be what it is. So I might have a little bit of blueberry cobbler this week, we'll see. Anyway, I'm pretty stoked about that. I think I'm gonna talk to her while I'm there too about, does she want somebody to partner with her? She grows the blueberries and they sell the blueberries because I have, with all of the people moving into Tennessee, there are people now who I know who live near her who might help her out and they could both get a little bit of side income because at this time of year, blueberries sell for a lot. I think it was like $16 for a half gallon last year. And that's not chump change when you start selling out of those every week for a few weeks while they're getting ripe. The other cool thing that happened is my friend Matt, who's an electrician, his wife restocks shelves for Nabisco. And she was at Walmart and she saw them taking all the seeds and throwing them in boxes. And she said, "What are you doing?" And they said, "Well, we're throwing these away." She said, "Why?" And they said, "Well, because we need to make room for next year's seeds and we need to pull this all down and we can't sell the old seeds. We had them on sale." And then she ended up saying, "Well, can I have them?" And they said, "Sure." So she came home with, I don't know if you've ever bought toilet paper on Amazon in a cube, like on subscription. It comes in this huge box, 4 boxes that size, full of packets of seeds. She came home with, sorted them all out, and she sent me this huge box of seeds last week. And I had a chicken processing workshop, which went great. And I just threw them out and I was like, anybody who wants any seeds, take what you want. Because this happened to me a couple years ago. And 2 years later, I'm still using seeds that somebody mailed me who listens to the podcast, who's probably listening to this right now, going, "That's me. I'm that guy." Right. So I've been using those seeds for years. The germination rate goes down a little bit on things like squash and whatnot, but not, it's just like, okay, I'll put 4 seeds in this hole instead of 2 seeds, right? You just put more out there. And so we got all these seeds. I threw them out at the chicken processing workshop, tossed out some Ziploc baggies. I was like, take whatever you want. Because I already had what I want for the gardens for the next year or two. And people were stoked. Well, I still had a ton of seeds left. So here's a cool thing. We have a Freedom Cell meetup next week. And one of our members who is here, Carrie, is having a GSD weekend. So I divided the seeds in half, put them in boxes, and shipped them to both people to go to those. So we have taken this free resource and just spread it out to people who can actually use the seeds rather than throwing seeds in the garbage. And I know that Ashley, she has donated them to, I think, 4-H and a whole bunch of other places. It was a total community score. And that's an example of when we develop these relationships and we know things are going on, that one incident it's probably going to benefit 50 people at this point, as opposed to just one person getting it and giving it to a couple neighbors, because we have the relationships. We know these things are going on. For all I know, it'll go from those meetups to other things, right? It's kind of cool how that happens. So that was pretty awesome. And then we're in the middle of a little bit of a roller coaster transition. I have put the link out to Holler Neighbors in case they want to stay on for Q&A after this. By the way, guys, it's about time to start getting your questions in for after the show Q&A. Just put the first couple words in all caps. I don't have any up there yet. So yeah, throw those in. Jenny is moving out in 1 week from base camp. And we spent a lot of time deciding what to do about base camp because it'd be good to have another person in there who's as, yes, surprise seeds, Strong Roots Resources. You're getting surprise seeds. Have one more person in the Holler neighborhood because it's really nice when we all live next to each other and share priorities on getting food from our land and all these other things. Somebody can go out of town and other neighbors know how to take care of it. We can help each other out when there are problems. If somebody's sick, they get soup, like all of those things. And it's been a little weird envisioning what the future looks like without Jenny because she's been such an integral part for years. But we're also really proud of her and excited for her job opportunity, right? So it's like this bittersweet, like push and pull. It's a roller coaster transition. She's having a garage sale this week. So if you want to come out, keep your eye out for that. But she's transitioning out. And what I'm going to do is furnish the place, list it on Airbnb for a minimum of a month rental, and we'll just have different people through it different months. If eventually a community member sort of appears that we have a good enough relationship with that we think we can have them here longer term, we'll talk about that. But until then, people can rent base camp a month at a time. And I'm hoping that people from the community will come out there. So there is a community price, an LFTN community price for this versus the retail price, right? So if you, when I get that out, just know if you see it on Airbnb, you need to send me a message on Airbnb saying, I'd like the community price, please. And then we'll do that. I have a couple people who've already reserved some months next year. So that'll be an option. I have somebody who wants to come in for less than a month, which I can work that out with people. We just have to talk about it in advance and then we go from there. So that's all what's happening in the community. We're going to be saying goodbye to Jenny, and then it's going to be like some extra fix up, decorate the place, get the kitchen outfitted, and then we'll launch it again. My goal is to have that available August 1st. So if somebody wants it for August, email me, Nicole@livingfreeintennessee.com. You will get a discount rate for that month because if you rent it in August, then you need to know that you're going to be helping us figure out what is missing from the kitchen and those sorts of things. Anyway, last segment. Oh, no, not second to last segment is infrastructure. This one's really short. So the sheep, right? All I've talked about is sheep under this for a long time. And we have been putting up fence and moving movable electrical fence, and tactical thought, what would be better is if on the perimeter fence of the property, which is almost done, by the way, we're like this close to having my property perimeter fenced, which has taken me 15 years. By me, I mean him, 2 years. But it's been a huge thing. We're going to run a hot wire around the perimeter fence so that we can tap into it and not be moving chargers, putting in and taking out grounding posts, like all of that stuff that's been going on. It's about to get a lot easier. And so I talked to Tactical and I said, well, since you're about to put that system in, do you want to do it as an open house? And he said, yeah, as long as we can schedule that. So I think after the swale workshop, which is July 30th and 31st, so sometime in August, we will have an open house here on a day when he's going to be putting in the perimeter hot wire on the perimeter fence to show you how to do that. You can help. I'm not charging money for this one. It's just going to be a show you how to do it. And I'm not serving food or anything. I may not even be here, but I thought it would be cool to see how that works. And Jack says it's a bazillion degrees in August. That is also true. We will do it early in the morning, probably around 7 start and finish by 10. And then I usually serve coffee, but potluck if you want to have a meal together. That's all I'm saying. I will keep you guys posted on that. The other thing with infrastructure I wanted to talk about is, so my family's in town. I have cooked meatloaf, a rotisserie chicken, stir fries. We're going to have tacos tonight, and none of that has been cooked inside my house. I got the outdoor kitchen like decluttered, cleaned out, and I'm cooking everything outside right now because it's a bazillion degrees outside. And if I cook inside, I have to cool the air from that. So I bring that up because if you are somewhere where you're fighting the hot and you don't have central air like I don't, I have a whole bunch of window units in my house. Something you can do that really helps, right, is get your cooking outside, and it's a lot easier than you think. If you have a grill, that's cooking outside. If you have a camp stove, that's cooking outside. If, like me, you've acquired a Blackstone, that's cooking outside. If you have one of those turkey roasting ovens for your Thanksgiving turkey, that's an oven. You can put casserole dishes in that and cook it outside. If you have a crock pot, that's cooking outside. Think about those things because it really does help keep the temperature in your house cooler, and that's just something that I like to do. You know what I hate is when I'm sitting here and I get signed out of my notes document. I just got signed out of my notes document. That's okay. Last segment of the day is the finances. Finances is just where we talk about how we're doing with you know the value we're getting from our land versus whatever we're doing, income wise. And we haven't had anything for sale except for the chicken processing workshop. And here's how that worked out. This year, to raise a chicken the way I raise it on soy-free food, running through a chicken tractor, getting grass, and all of those things, the cost for the chickens to buy the birds to be shipped out, to pay for the food, and a little bit of electricity for the brooding time and all of that was $14.75 per chicken was cost. This does not include labor. We talked about that last week. Well, what we did is we sold a chicken processing class that I teach, and the price of the class offsets my time, which is a little bit more than the cost of the class, right? We feed you, we give you the processing guide. People who came out here had a great time. It was fun. We played 60s music while we were killing them, and then we played hard rock and roll while we were eviscerating and processing them the rest of the way. So we had some good theme music for it. We had a good time. But that brought the cost in half for the chicken. So now we're at about $7-8 a bird in cost, which is a little bit more manageable. If I was going to sell them, as I said, they would need to be $30 a bird when I look at the labor and time put into them. But that is actually a really good way if you are doing projects that seem to be costing more than you want them to, or more than it's bringing in. You can do things like classes or sell your meat. If I was selling them at $30 a bird, then that would also help offset some of that cost, right? It's really important, though. The reason I bring this up is tracking what things really cost you on the homestead is a great habit to get into, even though it's a pain in the neck, because then my goats are freeloaders. I am paying every month to feed those goats. And while they are clearing some brush, they're not clearing like the sheep, and the sheep are less expensive every month. And there are 11 sheep and there are 2 goats. If I wasn't tracking that, I wouldn't know that. And then I'd probably keep the goats. Now I have to think about goats. And as I said, I have to either decide I have a pet goat, or I need to put her to work, or she needs to move on. That is just how we do that, right? So that's the finance update. I will not have a good, this is how much the sheep made in 6 months based on purchasing the flock and the inputs. And then we're going to process 5 of them in the fall and sell some of that meat. I won't know that until then. And I don't know that we have a big financial, we're selling things thing coming up until that time. I will say that I see more profit from meat, if done well on the homestead, than from my vegetable garden. Just because the market for vegetables in my area isn't super premium. But I could turn that around just by jigging what I do there. So it's just important to look at those things. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the homestead update for today. If you did and want to support the work I'm doing here, you can do it in 2 ways. One, get your coffee at hollerroast.com, where I am committed to accepting cryptocurrency, even though Coin Payments is slapping me in the face. To consider becoming a member. We do a member webinar every month. We're going to be going over canning practices this month. I will announce the date for that soon. It'll be in about 2 weeks. And those webinars are probably the best value you get. It's only $50 a month for 3 webinars a year. Unlimited is $120, not $50 a month, $50 a year. The 120 premium level gets you unlimited webinars. Last month we did how to, like, 5 things to consider before planning events. We are going to be doing a 2.0 event webinar where I talk about all the things I've done wrong on events. So that'll be a fun one. Anyway, that's all over at livingfreeintennessee.com. Just head on over there and click on the like. And thank you for the super chat, Jack. I really appreciate it. Guys, you can super chat me too. That's another way. Anyway, with that, guys, go out, make it a great week. And then we just leave silence. So we're into the Q&A session. I like to leave that little pause so that we can have a bit of, easy editing when I take the audio out of this for my podcast. Jack, I got to play with the audio thing and I had the loop thing hit, like, checked, and it like played my intro podcast music twice. I'm just going to go with that this time. How many sheep do we have? Tactical, why don't you take that one? Looks like Tactical is joined.
Yeah, we're at 11 right now. We lost one. I think it probably got into some form of a poisonous plant or something. And then we had another incident about 3 o'clock in the morning where we almost lost a second one, but the dog woke me up and was like, hey, there's a problem outside. So I went out and was able to identify the fact that one of the other sheep had gotten into something, and we're actually able to save that one. So we're sitting at 11 right now.
Yeah, so we got 11 sheep. In hindsight, would you have started with fewer sheep, Tactical?
Probably.
You've got some strange background noise too.
Oh, that's your roaster.
Okay.
Well,
Anyway, so how many sheep would you have said would have been ideal to start with? Like 2?
I probably would have started with more like 4. And the only reason I say that is just because with all of the initial clearing that we're having to do, it's a slug and it's hot. And so only having 4, they wouldn't be eating through everything as fast. So instead of having to move them every other day, which is pretty much what I'm doing right now, having half the sheep, you could extend that to every 4 days in theory.
Yeah. And I see a suggestion from Jack Spirko here on what to do about the goats. So he's suggesting goat tacos. Looks like Nick Ferguson is he's like, just use fodder trees and then you won't spend money on them, right? Does Tactical Redneck have his own channel? We need more Tactical. So I understand that you haven't done a channel takeover in a while, Tactical. What's up with what happened to Sheep Talk?
That one actually went, or should have been live.
When?
I don't know. I think it was when you were gone.
See, they want more Sheep Talk, not just when I'm gone.
Yeah. I actually do have a separate channel that's my channel, but I should hijack yours a little bit more. Right now, it's just I've been so busy trying to keep a path clear to move the sheep. So I have not had a chance. Like, I haven't posted anything about the sheep on my channel.
Yeah.
But I'm really
post about how much you love running the weed whacker next.
Oh God.
So this morning I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, I have one more paddock. And I'm like, okay. And all I hear in the distance is, I'm like, well, there's the weed whacker again, clearing space for that movable electrical fence. Okay, here we got a question from Layla Eubank. When you vacuum seal freeze-dried food in canning jars, do you need to use new lids like you do when you're canning? Here's my experience with vacuum sealing freeze-dried food in jars. You don't have to use new lids, but when you took the lid off your canning jar, you used that pointy tool that puts a little dent in it, they don't hold the seal as well. But one of our community members 3D prints these canning jar openers. I wish I had it on my desk right now. That opens the jars in a way that doesn't dent them, and then those lids work really well. I would keep an eye on the quality of the rubber seal because they do wear out over time, and you don't want your food to go bad. So the other thing is, like, how expensive is the lid? How long are you storing the food? Because for me, for my freeze-dried milk, which will be gone by the time it's time to get milk again next year, I'm less worried about the seal staying, and I will leave the ring on those for the winter. If it breaks the seal a little bit, it's not a big deal. If I'm trying to store something for several years, though, I'm going to use a new lid because I don't want to risk getting into that jar 2 years later. Humidity got in there and it ruined the food, right? So that's kind of the deal. Guys, in case you haven't noticed, Jenny is here and you can ask her questions too. She's been, how has packing been going, Jenny?
Well, it's still going.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have a lot of stuff, and it made me think about how much space I have and how small I'm going into, and how you will always fill the space you have versus just having what you need.
Yeah, it's very easy to fill space. I've been here 15 years and I have a lot of clutter. And it's funny because my sister hasn't been here. So my sister's visiting. She hasn't been here in 2 years. And I was like, is it more cluttery or less cluttery? She was like, it's way less cluttery. And I'm like, I feel like it's more cluttery.
No.
It's
No,
so
way
funny.
less.
Like, but it's like the minute you start decluttering, you start feeling more and more and more clutter. And that's kind of crazy. So 30-day reviews wants to know when the next Garden 30 is. And the answer is I've been doing Garden 30s and not live streaming from the garden because I have needed some alone time. And it doesn't feel like alone time when I'm talking to y'all. No offense, but that is what it is. So I will probably, and so my relatives are here until the 12th. And it's unlikely I will go live from the garden before they leave just because I'm running up, I'm doing my Garden 30, running down, taking a shower, cooking, hanging out with them as much as possible. I haven't seen my sister in 2 years. And so I'm trying to get as much time with her as possible because it's important. In fact, that car trouble that happened early in the middle of my podcast was that she's driving my brother-in-law to the airport because he's going home early. And I suspect what happened is the suspension system error came up and they were worried about driving it, even though that's just the compressor in my air ride. But I ended up, I don't know. I'm spending a lot of time with her, so I won't be doing a Garden 30 probably till next week. I guess I should let you know, Justin, since you've been helping me promote stuff. So I'll try to remember. Will you ever have guests on or do Garden 30 for you? If anybody would like to do a Garden 30 for me, just let me know. Justin, you could do it from your garden. It'd be kind of funny. You have the power to do that. You have the power to do that. I will invite you to do a Garden 30 on there. Strong Roots Resources says, freaking truth, Jenny, coming from a major downsizing over 2 years. That they went from like full-on house to tiny home. Mm-hmm. That was a big change. It's funny how much you think you need and then how much you don't really need. And, that kind of goes back to that question I had about balancing the money, income, job stuff with prepping, right? Sometimes we accumulate a lot of stuff and sink a lot of money into the things around us that we don't really need. And if we start thinking about what we really need, it simplifies that question a lot. So, like I just got a hole in my pants. I know not most people don't just talk about holes in their pants online, but I'm going to talk about holes in my pants. Okay. I got a hole. Did the processing workshop. I have a pair of dedicated jeans to processing because they get blood stains on them. And I took them off at the end of the day and I was like, oh, well, there's a hole. And it was like the kind of hole where you've worn out the fabric. I threw them away. I didn't even wash them. And now I'm going to order jeans. But what I don't have is a huge surplus of jeans here on hand because it'll just take up space. They get moldy and then they smell funny and then they're sketchy and then I don't want them anyway. So I tend to just rotate through. When one goes, I get another one. And I'm a weirdo woman who just has the one style and size of jeans she buys every single flipping time until that expires and the company goes out of business and then I have to find another one, which is, I hate that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have different styles of jeans, right?
No, I have yoga pants and but my actual jeans are the same.
Okay, so you do the same jeans, but you have different yoga pants.
I have different yoga pants.
Yeah, yeah. That is. Hey guys, any other questions before we wrap up for the day? I had Tactical on mute because he was background noise. I guess Tactical, anything you want to share with folks?
Yeah. If Jack's still on.
You're using your Jack mug in honor of Jack Spirko of the Survival Podcast. Hey guys, I saw Sue Zoldak on earlier, and I don't know if she's still on. She wants November 2024 for the base camp, if we're still doing that a month at a time. Sue is launching or has launched a digital magazine that's pretty cool. I'm actually pulling it up on Facebook right now because I can't remember the name of it, Sue, because it's so new for me. Anyway, but if you want to put it in the chat, I'll totally like. So many of you have noticed that I get really frustrated with the censorship I see on YouTube. And I used to watch what I say on YouTube a long time ago to not get strikes. And then I was like, no, that's not happening. That's not happening anymore. And I decided I don't care about strikes. And I remember I threw a fit because Facebook censored something I said. I threw a fit and I'm like, we need to get off Facebook. We're going to go to MeWe where they're not censoring us. And then I did these live chats on MeWe like twice. Remember that? Twice a week, super early in the morning when nobody wanted to be awake, but you guys all got up and talked to me over there anyway. And we developed a whole community on MeWe. To this day, my MeWe community is an empowering group of people who share information. They're probably chatting their butts off right now over there on chat. It's a lively chat. It's a manageable chat. I really like it. And that's because we just chose the platform. Well, Sue, who y'all know her from being on my podcast and being there, decided to start this Tech Media Policy for the True Cause, Vera Causa News. And they're focusing on the impact of a left-dominated tech industry. And then I think what will happen, I don't know, but empowering sort of awareness on some of the more free speech platforms. They're going to be talking about tech policy. They're going to highlight people who have experienced censorship. And that just launched on Independence Day. So like, check it out. It's Vera Causa News. It's facebook.com/Vera, VERA, Causa, I don't know how to say it, CAUSA, news, NEWS. That's right there. I'll throw a link actually in chat for those of you. Check it out. I find it's really important to keep up on policy things, even though I'm not in the policy world anymore. And this one's near and dear to my heart because a lot of these platforms that I'm supporting these days are decentralized. And I meant to tell you, there is, if you heard my lightning thing earlier, Fountain.fm is a podcast app on your phone. And it works really well for just listening to podcasts. And we've talked about sort of a tipping community or value for value exchange that can happen. So they have a special going on right now. If you download their app, just go to fountain.fm. And then if you have an iPhone, there's one link. If you have an Android, there's another link. It takes you to the Play Store, and then you know you're downloading the correct app. That's why I would do it that way. But it operates with Lightning. So right now, if you go there and listen to podcasts, they're doing a special where you get some Lightning, some Satoshis, and 500 Satoshis equals 10 cents US dollars. So, you know, like one Satoshi isn't very much, but it's giving you a Satoshi a minute just to listen. And then you can listen to your favorite podcasts and you can tip them or stream while you're listening a certain number of Satoshis a minute. And it's creating a community. You can follow people. You can pay Satoshis to comment on things. And it's setting up that value for value exchange environment that we talk about theoretically on the freedom side of things, but have never really implemented all that well. This one takes the sort of the geekhead mystery. I can't use the thing. It's difficult. I don't know how to set up a node, blah, 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 objection. Packages it in an app that's easy to use and actually works. Now, I told Jack I have crashed the app twice, But the deal is this: I break things. The way I crashed the app is my internet was so sketchy that day that when I popped it up, I was trying to do things with it that require the internet and not just my downloaded copies. And it didn't like that, and it got indigestion, and I had to force stop it. And then I popped it up again, and I listened to my podcast. It stopped. It started again where I was, and I realized that I shouldn't be trying to. A really cool thing you can do is go to a podcast, hit clips, make a clip, publish your favorite like copy of that clip, and then people can listen to just 30 seconds or 60 seconds or a couple minutes of something. And so that's really cool. You can export that as videos and put them on TikTok and other places. It's just a really fun tool, both as a content creator and as a listener. It's bridging that whole thing. So I really like it. Anyway, that's my big thing about Fountain.fm. I'm going to start like talking this up all the time. It's just what I'm going to do. I don't even know all the features on it. I'm still playing with it. So yeah. That's interesting. Hills Mill Homestead, just heard of the electric culture stuff. Ever do a clone bed and see what the difference was? I don't know what that's about. Anyway. What else is going on, Jenny?
Not a ton, just well, a lot of packing, and I have training to do too for the new job. So I've been swamped with that. I saw my last clients at the house yesterday. Big feelings around that because I'm going from working for myself to working for somebody else again. And but I do think it's like the better financial decision right now. Inevitably, I think I will be out on my own again. I have a hard time working for other people because I have my ideas about things and they have theirs. So, I have just a lot coming up. The other thing is I've been doing a lot of research on small space homesteading because I don't think that there is a part of my life where I give that up. I'm going from, I don't know how big base camp is.
1,600 square feet.
Okay. So I'm basically cutting my living space in half, but then I also can't like utilize grass because I'm going to an apartment. Like I can't have anything. I have like these little tiny 3x4 patio spaces. So I think I'm going to do some documenting on what it's like to be able to do what you really want to do. Even when you're in a small space and you don't think it can be done.
It can be done.
It can definitely be done.
Yeah, I'm sure you'll do a great job. So 30 Day Reviews wants to know, what's your new job?
So I'm working I actually have two. I'm working for a new spa, but it's a long way away. They have offered me a management position there. And then I've been offered a spot on the state board to help regulate and create policy for massage therapists.
Cool. All right. So I think we're done with questions for the day. Thanks for joining the live chat in person. Next time we're going to have her digitally. Anyway, guys, thanks for joining in, and we'll get the audio podcast out shortly. Make it a great week.